everyone in any industry wants to mitigate potential challenges by getting to the point where they have a platform that's acceptable for many, right?
Right.
Because you don't want to build something that isn't for the many. You want to, and even though the many may be not as big as the whole pie, it's a big enough pie that makes a manufacturer its revenue, its growth, and its targets. So the reality is this: we're never going to be everything to everyone, but you have to be somewhere for someone that's going to lead to everyone.
Right.
And if it's not there, then you're probably on the wrong track. And I think that's where I think manufacturing as a whole, technology as a whole, to solve those challenges, you have to be there if you're going to be a player in the marketplace. And that's what's beautiful to see, the evolution of some of these companies like yourself, is the evolution of that to a point of modernization allows you to take that big leap to the next 10 years, because frankly, we don't even know. I mean, I can say that it was funny. I was at ISC East, and I was interviewed by ISC, and the question basically was, what have you been surprised about in terms of the development of AI? Well, I basically stated, I can all say verbatim, is that when I spoke about it, and it's funny, they could track my conversations over those interviews over the years, right? And I said, I see AI becoming an operational challenge, an operational use. We're going to start seeing a lot of AI in the operational world. But I never really understood or saw the deployment of technology such as AI at the chip level, at the edge level, right? I saw it in operational environments. I saw it in the use of operational technology and security and that combination, but didn't see the rapid pace of edge, right? And chipsets at the edge, right? So it starts with Intel and Movidius, then moves to Jetson, then we have Umbrella, and then we have Halo, and then we have all of these chipsets, right? And I think that evolution in terms of compute, because one of the challenges that's always been in my mind was heat, or how do you make this happen with that type of processing, and how do they do it? And now I understand it. I've seen the evolution, and I track this really closely, and those are the surprises, right? So we are going to be constantly surprised, right? We are going to be constantly surprised. We're not, I would love to have the crystal ball to understand what the future looks like. I know that there's a lot of challenges going forward. And I think that, quantum is definitely a concern of mine because of encryption rates and everything else. I know people, poo-hoo this situation. I'm concerned about EMP. I'm concerned about the things that maybe people don't get a concern, because I always look to the future of our enemies, our adversaries, and those attacking us. I look at what could be the next thing that's going to be the challenge that we're going to have to face.
Right.
And I think I look at technology as being, never be the panacea for anyone, but be the answer for those who are important.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I can see technology as it is. And if I was different, if I was the founder of NVIDIA, it'd be different, but I'm not, right? I'm a consultant in the industry that has helped a lot of companies and a lot of people. And my job is to try to make sure that they are successful at what they do. And it's the fun to see it, and it's a fun to be part of it. And it's great but I'll tell you something though, the value of it is so critical, because here's the end result of all of this. We can talk all we want about and placate as many people as we want. Our job is to do one really important thing: protect people, process, and technology, and assets. And that's what we have to do.
It is that simple, and yet it's mind-blowingly complex, right? And in order to do that, it goes back to everything we've been talking about, right? In terms of the business value and understanding all of that, and the crucial role that integrators play in that conversation to basically bridge these two gaps, these two universes of end users and manufacturers, right? And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
And it does end up, I think having a clarity in the value of risk and the metrics to get to the value of risk, so that we can mitigate liability. If we could just all, and from the use of integrators to the manufacturer to end user requirements and needs, to be on the same page, which we're not,
Right.
but to be on that same page. And one of the, always a concern of mine is technology for the sake of technology is dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the biggest challenges, and this is for everything I think we do, is market confusion, right? Technology that pretends or says and things and creating this confusion in the marketplace tends to challenge everyone. And I think that that's why it's so important, when we all develop technology, that we all understand the importance of it, but also what it's supposed to do, at the end of the day. And unfortunately, I've seen in the access control world and especially, I'm going to tell you, there have been, like, I call it pet rock technology. So there's a lot of pet rock technology in the past, and it was there to make money. Yeah, organizations prop tech. Oh, yeah, there you go. Those type of technologies, honestly, were just money makers, right? I want technology that really solve challenges,
right,
and become something really valuable for the end user, and also become very powerful in mitigating liability and risk. That's the most important piece, I think, for me. And I see it only, and honestly, most of our clients, that's what I want, right? That's what I look for. I don't pick up a client if I don't believe that that's what they're going to do. That's their intent, right? Because there's too much. It's muddy waters past that. Most people do not understand that some organizations, and it's funny, Adi Karasik, he's a chair of our board and works with a company called Amentum. It's funny, the other day, we were on a panel together, and he said he has a client, they have a large client that had compliance and regulatory issues, right? They needed to move to another technology. They said, we're being fined this amount of money every month for violations in terms of their liabilities or the regulatory environment. They said plainly, we'll pay the penalty because the cost of deploying technology at this level will far surpass the penalty.
They'd rather just pay the fine.
Pay the fine.
Right. Amazing.
Exactly. Right. So why are regulations created? Now we hope, everybody hopes the regulations when needed are done to protect people.
Yeah.
Right. I always say that's the most important piece.
Listen, I came from, many years ago, we used to be in the environmental industry, and believe me, I lived through this, because we would build products, but a lot of companies would just say, we'd rather just pay the fine, and it was brutal. And the environment.
So there you go.
Yes.
Right?
I get it.
So the problem stems from, look, corporations. There's a bottom line to virtually every decision, always, right? You can't make a decision without a bottom line, especially if you're a public company, because it's. I always say that you're using the public trust, right? At the end of the day, once you're a public company, even a private company has responsibility, obviously, to not only their people, but the people that they serve. The challenge is that I think sometimes they get into a situation where the value of the answer does not equate to the risk that they're willing to take. When we talk about the acceptable level of risk, they're willing to take big risk, right? And they're going to weigh that risk against their business model. So sometimes that acceptable level of risk doesn't match up to the financial burden, right? And here's the real big problem, right? In the past 50 years, and we talk about 50 years because it's a big number right now. In the past 50 years, we have seen the evolution of modern business. Modern business isn't the same as 50 years ago, all right? The people who work within those businesses have also changed, and the process of doing business has changed. Now, the evolution of communication systems and transportation systems and deployment systems and accounting systems, all of that have changed, including the products themselves, the
businesses
fundamentally. But unfortunately, believe it or not, that infrastructure that supports these systems haven't. So So, you go to these large organizations and you go, well, your infrastructure needs to be replaced. Well, that'll be, $22 million to change the infrastructure in the US. Well, we're not going to spend that kind of money, or $100 million or $1 billion if it's a global corporation and they have nothing but old infrastructure, especially in critical infrastructure, especially in the utility space, especially in energy, where there's a highest level of potential failure.
Right.
Go to a water system in the United States, water treatment. Water's important to us, right? I mean, we need it. Do you realize that the water industry is the least regulated in the world, in the United States?
That doesn't surprise me at all.
There are very few regulations in water. And so at the end of the day, when we look at this, and you know why it's so difficult? Because the infrastructure is archaic and ancient.
Right.
It's over 100 years old in some cases.
Yeah. It's like most refineries in this country.
So when somebody comes in with this incredible technology and says, we're going to make you smart, and they're going to go, well, how? I'm like, well, we're going to use wireless. We can't use wireless. We can use cloud. We're not going to use cloud. It's got to be on-prem. Or they have certain regulations that prevent them based upon modern regulations because of technology. You see the problem?
That's right. Or the cost is maybe 3x because, of all the regulations.
I mean, you walk into a Frito-Lay plant or some that has been producing, corn, Doritos or whatever. Exactly. And you're going to tell them, all right, we're going to modernize. And this is like an ancient plant that it's a leftover and they haven't modernized it, but they have a wing of their business that grew, but they still have all this. It says, why don't you have cameras? Why aren't you using camera analytics to determine your beltline costs? And do you really, we have nothing here. And try to put a Wi-Fi with walls that are about, 2.5 feet thick. I'm like, so this isn't just a challenge. This is a horrific challenge. In New York City alone, right? And it's funny how it kind of disappeared. The problem disappeared when, people started talking about the pandemic and other social problems. The reality is the infrastructure in Manhattan is deteriorating. It's to its very bones, right? And they want to add technology. I said, how are you going to add technology when your road is falling apart?
Yeah, or the subways are in such disrepair, they're not maintaining it. I mean, it's crazy.
So where I'm going with this is this. The evolution of technology has to start with infrastructure. And without that infrastructure spend and having a really a rational thought here, I mean, someday I think we'll all have kind of like common sense. I would love, can we agree that if we could just get to common sense, right, we've come a long way. All right. So let's all be logical for a moment. Just have some logic, not flawed, but just some common sense logic. Here's our challenge. We have an entire culture of people using technology today, your phone, your this, your that, your Google, that use that to think. So we've lost critical thinking. Now, why I'm bringing this is how we make decisions in technology, how we make decisions in security. We go from logic, which, okay, flawed or not, but we bypass critical thinking and deductive reasoning to get to emotion. So all of our decision making for the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years is based on emotion.
Yep.
That's scary to me. And that's where we as people who lead this industry, from the Security Industry Association to manufacturers, have to realize when we develop technology, and how we present it in the face of liability and business risk, we have to build it so that it supports this challenge, because we can't expect the population to actually think. We have to think for them.
You bring up an interesting point, and I actually think that there are certain organizations that are very forward about this, and they make the investment despite, let's say, the drain on shareholder value or, the short term, let's say, implications to your bottom line. And I think if you look at those companies over time, you see they start to separate themselves from the rest of the organization because they make the investment, right, when it's necessary. They don't, let's say, sacrifice long-term value for short-term gains, right? And I think that's, I mean, I think there are, there are probably some organizations in the public sector too that you could point to that do that. And I think but that's also why there's this like, diverging,
dichotomy.
set of facts here, right? And I think, the reality is that more organizations have to bake the ongoing reinvestment into technology and modernization into the cost of living, right? The daily cost of doing business versus viewing it as 15 years, I'm not going to touch this, right? I mean, it's sort of like the same philosophy of like how you maintain, like something in your house, right? A HVAC system, you can not service it for 15 years and it'll go bust in 5 years nowadays, right? But if you incur the cost of maintaining it every year and pay to have somebody come and service it, it actually extends the life of that technology, right? And it's a similar kind of mindset, I think, that we're lacking across, things like infrastructure in Manhattan or companies that are stuck with archaic, you'd be shocked how many customers will reach out to us today saying, oh, we bought this camera in 2004. We want another one. I was just like, guys, like I'll see, because I get, I see all these inquiries and like I'm scratching my head and like this is a camera that hasn't been in our portfolio for 20 years, right? And it's just, I mean, the fact that organizations will really just cut off their nose to spite their face, right?
Well, and that's the whole premise of bringing technology that can solve business challenges right from the get-go, creating a value to technology. That's where we failed many years. For many years, we didn't understand the value of technology. And I think good reason, because I don't think it was there, right? I think, having an analog camera that did a specific thing, or, I mean, look, we go back to the old Vicon days and the Pelco days, and this is what you had. Use it, right? This, you had a one guard looking at, these black and white monitors. Well, of course, things have changed. The revolution took place. The reality is that it took place for the sake of technology, but not for the sake of liability and business use case. If it had done what IT had done, because if you let's go back and do an analogy here. IT was built for business use. Business cases were out of the box, right? Until that got into the hands of the public. Then the public started using technology for what? Gaming and application, things that were totally out of the box for business use. But it was easier for that technology to adopt or adapt to the use in the public sector. In security, we didn't build it. We built it for security alone, not for business use. We had no intention of security ever being used for business use. So closed circuit television, right? I always say people who still use the term CCTV, that just says, okay, you're either in a skiff, right? You're in a skiff and you're in an air-gapped environment where they actually use closed circuit television, right. Or you just told us that you have no clue what's going on in the marketplace. So the problem is this. It's been up to, and that's why I've been a manufacturer consultant for many years in terms of technology, is to teach and train those who don't understand it and need to understand it. And then work with end users to say, these are the questions you should be asking. These are the things that you have to be concerned about, so that we can get into a position where you're right, the give and take. The biggest challenge for a manufacturer is you have to have what? You have to have a pull. If you have no pull, you can push all you want, but if there's no pull, it's never going to happen. So education, training is so critical in all of this. And I think we're in that transformational period in the history of security. And, with a lot of the thought leaders in our industry, and fortunately I've been one of those guys, you have to train and teach, you have to educate. And I always say, that's why I write the articles. That's why I write the blogs. That's why I speak at so many of these conferences, is that I want people and train people to listen and to learn and to speak the right language. The language of security no longer is threat and vulnerability. It is a broader conversation that leads us to global liability and liability as a whole. And that in and of itself is putting us into a position of strength.
Right.
That means we are in the data world and we are in the business world. That's what changes this dynamic. So now, when IT built itself, IBM green screens for operational use, and it moved into the public sector and moved into this cloud-based frictionless environment, cybersecurity and use of cybersecurity, the physical security world now is realizing, well, we have to be in step with that conversation. And I think that that's what you're finding in integrators. That's what you're finding in some consultants. This is what you're finding in good manufacturers. I mean, we see, at the end of the day, you can look at the manufacturers today, right? And what's happening. We see unification. We see companies, bring together different solutions that solve those business problems.
Right.
So that's happening. That's where the success that I say that the hockey stick success rate is going to take place. And yes, there are other companies that are not going to be in step with that. And that's why innovation, when done at the right time, right?
Yeah.
Puts you in a position where you can catch up quickly and do the right things.